Podcast. I'm Brandon. He's Avi. What's going on?
Weekend has passed. We got past another takeover in SmackDown. We're in the last 22 minutes of Raw, so we'll get cooking with NXT. That's your baby. So let's take us through it. How did it go this weekend?
It was decent. It wasn't a blowaway like it usually is to me. It only came off as decent. There were a couple of good matches, but for the most part, I think the women's tag, not the tag, I apologize. The women's championship was not good at all. They did not mesh well. The tag team titles between Street Profits and Undisputed Era was good, but I guess the only shocking part of that match was I guess everyone expected the Street Profits to lose because they were going to Raw, but they actually kept the belts. So I guess they're going to keep going with these backstage promos and not actually make the full leap to Raw. The triple threat was okay, but you kind of pointed something out is like, what was the point of it? They kind of took the air out of the balloon on the last episode of NXT when Dunn pinned Rodney Strong already. It's like, right? I believe that was a point you brought up. Like, what was the point of that?
Yeah, I didn't understand where they're going with that. I mean, I've never seen a triple threat match for a championship where 2/3 of the match already won clean, as clean could be. So now you're having a triple threat match for what reason exactly? I'm not the biggest Velveteen Dream fan. My issue with NXT this weekend, it seemed almost like a kid's show. I don't know if it was the production or just the angles or the way the angles are played out. Like that last match, the first fall seemed okay. The second fall was okay with. That third fall just seemed, it wasn't even like cartoonish. It honestly feels like you're watching a kid's show when you watch NXT. And, NXT is going to be put under a real microscope starting in October when they're basically going to be, Vince's weapon against AEW, so to speak.
So, basically all they got.
Yeah, but I mean, suffice to say, I don't see them doing better against AEW. I think Vince at some point may have to scrap the whole NXT idea and add in a show to go head-to-head with AEW. Look, we already agree. Vince is not going to let somebody just show up and go unopposed. That is never going to happen in a trillion years. Vince has never done it where he said, oh, here, come on and have your own wrestling federation. Not going to happen. He allowed TNA to survive for the simple fact that TNA or Impact, except for that one brief time they were on Monday nights, really didn't come after Vince at all. They were basically taking anybody he fired. They never opposed him in any way, shape, or form. It really never showed as a threat. AEW is a threat, and I don't know if NXT is the answer to AEW. And I think Vince may give it a couple of months, but if you're at a point where AEW is running roughshod over NXT ratings-wise, I can't see Vince taking that. And I got to be honest, with what AEW is offering versus what NXT is offering, I think AEW is going to win. And I'll tell you, this past weekend, I'm watching NXT, and it just came very off as like a kid's show to me. I don't know if you got the same feeling. I don't know if it was the production or the characters or a combination of both. It was very kiddish, if you understand what I'm saying.
I think they tried to be way too cute with the main event. I mean, obviously, WWE has kind of taken the luster and the shine off of 2 out of 3 falls matches because it's just every week. We had one even earlier tonight where Andrade freaking swept Rey Mysterio in a 2 out of 3 fall. What's the point? If they're going to sweep, why not just have it a regular match? But we'll get to that later on. I think they got too cute with that last match. First off, you do 25 minutes in the original match. Then you do maybe 7 or 8 minutes for the street fight. And then you do another 20 minutes for the cage match. First off, you should have done a regular cage match. Didn't need all that gaga. Didn't need all the weapons and stuff. They didn't add anything to the match. It almost goes back to the last matches they had where, we talked about the no-sell and the 35 false finishes and things of that sort. It just got too much, and I think it took away from the main event. And I don't think this was even one of their better ones. I think the second of the three was the best of their series that they had.
Yeah, I mean, historically, 2 out of 3 falls have always kind of followed the same formula. Even back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, it always kind of followed the same formula. First fall, 15, 20 minutes. Then your second fall was always maybe like a 8 to 10 minute match. And then your third fall would be like your real 25, 30 minute type deal. It just, like I said, I was watching it and it just didn't have I don't know if it was the production or just the way it was it just seemed very like a kid show. It seemed like a real, like if you took WWE and made it into a child show, it'd be NXT. And that's not going to compete against AEW. If AEW is going the way it's going to go, which it comes across to me as a cross between, say, New Japan and ROH, somewhere in the middle of those two, I think you have a little bit of your hard style, a little bit of that indie flying around style, with a little bit of that classic North American style. That NXT style is not going to be able to compete. So, I don't know what's going to happen with NXT. I don't know how long Vince is going to give it. Because think about it. If NXT starts to get the crap beaten out of them on a weekly basis, it's going to make the product look very weak.
Mm-hmm.
So Vince really can't afford to let NXT get weak. What my fear is that NXT does start to get the crap beaten out of them, and Vince starts taking guys from SmackDown and Raw and shoving them down there.
What else does Vince have? His main roster product ain't going to compete with AEW. He basically has all his eggs in one basket with NXT. If he's gonna compete and put something against AEW, and like you said, he's not gonna not do that. All he has in his basket is AEW. I'm sorry, NXT. He has nothing else. There is nothing on that main roster that is going to be like, that's going to compete with AEW. Because the main roster is drizzling shit. So let's be real right now. Right. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that. I see a lot of the IWC thought that SummerSlam was great, but I'm not gonna agree with that one. But we'll get into that in a few minutes. But yeah.
You know what it is also? I mean, listen, Vince competed before without going head-to-head. If you look at the original War, and if you want to YouTube anything, our listeners, or even yourself, if you remember the show, the George Michael Sports Machine, mm-hmm. It was on Channel 4. I believe it would come on after the Channel 4 News, NBC News in New York over here. It would come on at about 11:30, 12 o'clock, maybe 12:15 on Sunday night after the news. And it was a guy, George Michael. It was a syndicated sports show. It was maybe a half hour long. And he once did a special on the WWF NWA War. I think this was right around, I want to say, either summer of 87 or summer of 88. I know it was during the Great American Bash Tour where they were going around interviewing NWA guys and stuff like that. And it was interesting because back then you had a war between the NWA and WWF, but they weren't going head-to-head really until later on with the pay-per-views and the Clash of Champions, things of that nature. You basically had WCW Saturday night, you had main event on Sunday, and you had Friday Night Prime. While WWF at the time, their big shows were on Sunday morning and Monday night on USA Network. So they really weren't going head-to-head on TV. They were going head-to-head in other ways. I think Vince might be better off letting it play out like that because, honestly, he's putting NXT in a tough position. You're basically taking your developmental territory and putting them head-to-head with your competition, which I guess might be Vince's way of saying, we find you so unworthy, we're going to let our farm system take care of you. But, if you look at it logically from a real fan's point of view, NXT is where you were getting your better in-ring work lately. And that was funny. Rollins just threw his T-shirt into the crowd on Raw, and they threw it back. I don't know if you saw that or not just now.
Oh no, I was looking. I was looking at you.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll get to that in a second. I just don't know. I think he's putting NXT in a tough position, and I don't know if it's a smart move to do. But you're right. Listen, he had nothing else to do. Vince is not going to let him go unopposed. All he has is NXT. I just don't see the likes of Velveteen Dream being able to hold a candle to the guys in AEW. That being said, listen, overall, it wasn't a terrible card. SummerSlam. We've seen worse SummerSlams. I mean, God, we had Mabel and Diesel once main evented.
Are we in agreement that Bray Wyatt made that pay-per-view?
Yes, I was slightly disappointed. I'll get to that in a few minutes. I think there were just better things they could have done with that. But overall, listen, I go back to NXT. Wasn't a horrible card. Wasn't a great card. We've seen better ones. To me, it was a very average pay-per-view. I have a feeling, taking away from the cage match, obviously, that's pretty much what you're going to see week in and week out. I kind of feel like if they do this show on FS1 like is being predicted. I think you're going to see, 4 to 6 good matches. I think they're going to try to win you over with the in-ring work, which I hope, because honestly, the mic work with some of these guys is atrocious. And I think that's what you're going to get week in and week out, which will be fine. I don't think there's going to be much of a decision to make at first. I think AEW is going to crush them at first. If AEW starts to shit the bed, NXT will be fine. But if AEW does what I think and hope they can do, I think NXT is going to be getting shit on every week. I mean, come October 2nd, there's no question what I'm watching. Sure. NXT is going to be getting DVR. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm going to go back to the pay-per-view real quick, and then I'll touch on Wednesdays. But to me, you said a kid show, but I just felt it was missing some sort of pizzazz. Usually it's this big game atmosphere when it comes to NXT, and it was just, something was missing from, something was just missing from it this month. I don't know if it's the fact that they recorded so far in advance that you couldn't really get a feeling of anticipation, because they did something very rare. They recorded 2 months of TV in one sitting. They don't usually do that. They usually do month to month. So I don't know if it had something to do with that. I don't know if it was just, I don't know. It was just missing something.
It just didn't seem like an important show. It didn't seem like a real show. It seemed like what you would see on just a very typical weekly show. You know what I'm saying? It's like the 2 out of 3 falls match. Okay. Honestly, this whole weekend did not seem special or big. And if you look at the history of SummerSlam, man, that was some of your best pay-per-views for the year for WWE sometimes. SummerSlam 92 comes to mind. SummerSlam 97 comes to mind. 98 comes to mind. 99 comes to mind. SummerSlam 02, which is probably one of your top 5 pay-per-views of all time, comes to mind. You can make the argument that SummerSlam 2002 might be the best pay-per-view of all time, to be honest with you, from the Nassau Coliseum. That was the year that Brock beat Rock, and I believe that HBK made his comeback. I mean, that's one of the best pay-per-views in the history of pay-per-views, period. Forget about SummerSlam. This SummerSlam, quite honestly, it honestly was just a long episode of Raw with some SmackDown sprinkled in. It was a very Raw-dominated show. Had a Raw feel to it. And just, aside from Kofi and Orton and a couple of other little sprinkled in matches, it just felt like a commercial-free episode of Raw where you kind of just got through it. You know what I'm saying?
You can tell that they did not put as much effort as they usually do, because the pay-per-view ended before 11. When does one of their major 4 end so soon? I mean, we had WrestleMania went like almost 8 hours. Usually SummerSlam goes 6-7 hours, and they went, I think it was, after the pre-show, I think it was 4.5. They never go that long, that short.
I think they're learning the lessons of pay-per-view to go a little shorter. I think people have complained a lot that the pay-per-views are too long. I mean, if you go match by match in this pay-per-view, you know what it kind of reminds me of? SummerSlam 96. SummerSlam 96 was kind of like a very slow pay-per-view. And that's what this pay-per-view kind of reminded me of. It was just a slow pay-per-view. Nothing really big happened. Nothing really important happened. You had one title change where You know, I mean, Rollins wins the belt. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Honestly, is it that big of a deal? Not really. You know, I'm at the point now where I look at that pay-per-view, and it wasn't a bad pay-per-view, to be honest with you. I didn't dislike it. Because it's kind of hard to really tear anything apart on it. You know what I'm saying? It was just a very slow pay-per-view that happened. You know, there's really nothing on it that I could really tear apart. I don't know if you can. There's nothing there that I can honestly say, wow, that was really bad.
The KO Shane McMahon match to me was bad.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
made no sense. It
That
was
actually, I got to jump in on that, actually. Thank you for reminding me, because I got to wonder if Kevin Owens was drunk or stoned in that match, because how many spots did he miss? He almost got counted out twice. I don't know if you paid attention to that. There were two separate times where you realize that Kevin Owens is about to get counted out, and even the referee, you kind of saw saying, "What are you doing?" You know, and it's just like, and I got to bring that up. Thank you for reminding me. I actually wasn't going to rip apart anything in this show, but now I'm going to. It's 2019. In 1999, we were seeing a McMahon in the ring with an evil referee fighting somebody. And 20 years later, we're still seeing a McMahon in the ring with an evil referee.
Mm-hmm.
When's it going to end already? It's enough. Like, what is with the freaking focus on Shane McMahon?
This should have been a career versus career match. It shouldn't have just been
Period.
Kevin Owens.
This should have even been an angle.
Bro. What else are you going to do with KO at this point? They are trying to make him the new Stone Cold by having him do this with Shane, who's horrible. You're not getting him over anywhere. He's not getting any over. Take away any reaction last night. They were in Canada. He's going to get the hometown reaction, blah, blah, blah. But this angle itself is not getting Kevin Owens over as a face.
Would you have really objected to Kevin Owens, Kofi Kingston, Randy Orton in a triple threat match?
I would have preferred that Shane be the referee and have Drew McIntyre against Kevin Owens. Or even at the last minute, not even announce it. Drew wasn't even on the show. And Shane be like, you know what?
Why is Drew not on a summer? They're really just, I don't know what they're doing with this guy.
There's a lot of people who weren't on yesterday.
He's probably the most talented guy on the entire freaking roster right now, and you're shitting on him.
He had a good match tonight with Cedric, I'll tell you that much.
Oh,
that Claymore that he hit tonight was nasty. But no Roman Reigns, no Daniel Bryan, no Samoa Joe, no Drew McIntyre. That's for your top names, and they're not have any presence on this show. But yet Shane McMahon has a match.
Yeah, I don't know. Right now, the like I said, it's a very misdirected roster. I'm not going to say you have to put Drew in the main event, but you know what? Drew versus Kevin Owens last night, that would have been perfectly fine by me. Mm-hmm. With Shane as your referee, I agree. That would have been fine. Roman's out on your show. I don't know what they're doing with Roman Reigns at this point. I mean, you're at a point now where you just kept a guy who main evented, what, 4 WrestleManias in a row off of SummerSlam. What am I missing with that one?
Do you think, and I read this a couple of months ago, do you think Vince is afraid to push him back into the main spot in case he gets sick again?
Yeah, probably. I would agree with that.
So maybe that's why. I mean, I know they're still building on this whole,
If that's the case, then why bring him back and put him in any kind of prominent role whatsoever?
I don't know. So instead, let's do a whodunit mystery.
Right. I mean, it's at the point now where, honestly, that's a guy, Roman Reigns, who I'd love to just see him and Seth Rollins in a cute little tag team and just get them both away from that world title scene. Obviously, at this point, Roman Reigns isn't part of the world title scene. Mm-hmm. Seth Rollins, unfortunately, is champion again. I mean, it was a very inconsequential pay-per-view. That's the best way to put it. Like I said, very similar to SummerSlam 96, where nothing happened. The matches were just very slow. Really, what came out of this pay-per-view, if you think about it?
Absolutely nothing. It was the Seinfeld of pay-per-views. It was a show about nothing.
This whole weekend was very inconsequential, if you think about it, because really nothing really comes out of this weekend, And I got to go back to NXT for a second. Like, is Johnny Gargano ever going to win a big match?
I akin him to the Tommy Dreamer of NXT. If you think about it, that's the way they're playing him off, as Tommy Dreamer. He loses the big ones. He's the heart and soul of NXT. He's basically playing the role of Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, that's what it is. But, there's rumors that was his swan song. Regal came out after the cameras ended, and, he raised his hand and all this stuff. They're saying that he's going to go to the main roster. Huge mistake if he is. I don't care if Paul Heyman is booking the show. Him on the main roster is a big mistake. He needs to stay in NXT.
So I'm watching Raw right now, and Braun Strowman and Ricochet both came in to save Seth Rollins from the OC.
Oh, there's another guy who wasn't on the pay-per-view, Braun Strowman. Nowhere to be seen.
Wow, Braun is looking huge right now. This is the biggest Braun's looked in a while, if even possible.
Well, he hasn't been on TV, so he has plenty of time to be in the gym.
So you're going to have a Braun Strowman, Rollins, Ricochet, 6-man match next week against the OC, obviously. That's what I'm at.
We only have 2 minutes left. Otherwise, I thought they would have Teddy Long this right now.
I mean, like I said, it wasn't a tough pay-per-view to watch. We've seen worse pay-per-views. The in-ring action was okay. Like I said, I can't sit here and say it was a bad pay-per-view. Would I say it was good? From an in-ring standpoint, it was borderline okay to good. From a storyline standpoint, it was just pointless. Because if you think about it, no feuds came to an end that were important. No feuds have started that were important. It was just a very inconsequential pay-per-view. It almost reminded me of just a random Raw, like 3 weeks out from a pay-per-view where you really haven't got anything started yet.
Well, let's go through it.
Huh?
Go ahead, finish your thought. I apologize. I stepped on you.
I kind of feel like WWE is getting to the point now where they're becoming just a monthly show. Where your first episode of Raw and SmackDown is just basically going to set up the next 3 weeks to get to your next pay-per-view. It's like it's just a pay-per-view to pay-per-view company now.
Which is funny because their TV is more important and more of a revenue stream than their pay-per-views are.
Yeah, I look at what they're doing now with the product, and I just feel like it's a pay-per-view to pay-per-view company where nothing else matters except what we're doing on the next pay-per-view.
And then make your pay-per-views be better. There needs to be some sort of storyline to go into the pay-per-views. These storylines are just atrocious. There's nothing like, okay, I'm going to give them credit on the Kofi Randy Orton thing. They're actually going back to history from 10 years ago. More than a month, which I'm shocked because usually they forget things in a month. But then you do that whole thing and then you basically redo last year's AJ Styles Samoa Joe match with a double countout because he's talking to the family and all this stuff. I mean, even the Toronto crowd shit on that finish.
It was a bad finish. Listen, Kofi as champion, I don't think it'll make anyone happy.
The bloom is off that rose, as they say.
Yeah, Orton, I mean, I don't think either one of us ever loved Orton. But that being said, it wasn't a horrible match. We expected it not to be a horrible match. But it was like every other match in the show. The show itself was just a very slow match. As Bruce Pritchard said about SummerSlam 96, it was a slow pay-per-view. I honestly felt like every match I was watching was just like a test of my patience almost.
Even the one match that was supposed to steal the show, AJ Styles and Ricochet, was slow. They never got a chance. They never kicked it into third gear.
Yeah, like I said, it was just a very slow pay-per-view. It's just, I don't know if they're tired, these guys, or they just don't give a shit at this point, but just the matches were just slow, plotting. It was overselling everything to death. There was just nothing there that I really thought was that big of a deal last night. Like I said, it was a pay-per-view that was completely inconsequential. But on top of that, what really bothered me the most was the simple fact that, the matches itself, like I said, they weren't bad, but they were just slow.
Well, what do you feel was the best match of the card? Let's break it down two ways. From an in-ring standpoint, just the wrestling, what was the best match of the card?
Well, it's not going to be Ziggler and Goldberg, that's for sure.
Come on, no one expected that to be a Matt classic. That went exactly how it should have and how it was expected.
I guess Ricochet and Styles. I didn't think Lesnar and Rollins was that bad.
Lesnar sold. I think that might have been the longest match Lesnar had since WrestleMania 24.
That's also what was weird about last night. You know that the longest match of the night was 17 minutes?
Yep. Kofi and Randy was the longest match.
That was odd. I haven't seen a pay-per-view in a very long time where you had such short matches. It wasn't a situation where you had 15 matches, you had to speed the whole thing up. But what'd you have, maybe 10, 11 matches totally booked?
10 matches on the main card, yeah.
Yeah, so 10 matches, your longest one 17 minutes. They spent a shitload of time on the backstage vignette and all the vignettes leading up to each match. It was just very strange how each match was so slow.
What do you think about them eliminating packages?
Slow and short.
Let me ask you, what do you think about them eliminating the video packages? I mean, they do a 2-hour pre-show. That's that's where you're supposed to be selling it and showing the video packages. Don't you think they should start eliminating those video packages? They don't need to show the same 3-minute video packages for every single match that they're showing on the pre-show.
I can agree with that. It was just like I said, a very slow pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. But it was weird that every match was so short.
Yeah. Well, let's go through this real quick. Pre-show had Drew Gulak to keep the title over Oney Lorcan. I honestly got home after the match, so I didn't even see it. So I can't really say anything. And that went 8:45. You have Buddy Murphy beat Apollo Crews by DQ, which was a match that basically was to move forward the angle between Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns.
Which I don't understand where the hell that angle's going.
Apparently, we're finding out tomorrow night on SmackDown, according to, Michael Cole.
Yeah, well, the IWC base told us that SummerSlam was going to be rated TV 14. That never came to fruition.
I don't have that guy's name, but I'm going to call that guy out the next show because he posted a whole bunch of shit for a day that I sent to you in the group chat, and none of the shit he posted came true.
Jesus. That was horrible. First of all,
healbynature.com. That was his website. You, sir, are a liar and a bastard.
Bamboozled us.
Bamboozled TV 14. It was never TV 14. There was never blood. The blood and guts. We don't do blood and guts in WWE. Vince said it.
TV 14, my balls. That was like TV 12, please.
Right. So we got Bliss and Nikki Cross defeated the Iconics and kept the tag titles. That went 6:15. Then the main show starts, and okay, I'll give this. This was a decent match, submission match. Becky Lynch and Natalya. 12.5 minutes.
Yeah,
they went on. They did pretty well. I mean, again, no real surprise who won. And then we had Goldberg against Dolph. Again, 1:50. So that's actually pretty long for a Goldberg match. But, Goldberg gets the spear, gets the jackhammer. I guess Dolph's new gimmick is after he gets beat, he's going to call the guy back out to get beat again. So he got hit with 3 spears altogether.
He sold them pretty well, though. I have to give him credit where it's due.
Well, the most he does is he bumps well. So you know what? That last spear where Goldberg ran the ropes and then nailed him, he did look like Dolph was broken in half.
Yeah, that wasn't bad. I kind of enjoyed that.
Dolph has become basically a superstar jobber.
Yeah, basically jobber to the stars. But you know what? He takes bumps well, so screw it.
Him and Sami Zayn. Do you realize, I was thinking about this, Sami Zayn came back the night after WrestleMania. I don't think he's won a match on television since.
I believe you're probably correct about that.
So how about them apples? Oh, I want to bring up the fact that also on the pre-show, Edge made an appearance to a huge pop. And this was the first time that Edge actually got physical in the ring since his retirement. And he hit a spear on Elias. I don't think we're going to see a comeback, but, it's still interesting that he actually did, something. He usually refrains from that. Then we have the AJ against Ricochet match. AJ kept the title, 13 minutes even. And I actually heard today that they stole that finish from TNA. That AJ did that finish back in Impact, where Ricochet went for the flip. He got caught into the Styles Clash.
Well, WWE has always had a reputation of borrowing ideas, as we know.
All right, here's another one I want to rip apart. Bayley and Ember Moon. This was a boring, slow, plotting match.
I'm going to cut you off right now. When has Bayley ever not given us a boring, slow match?
Takeover 1, Brooklyn.
There you go.
That's it. The match that I said was good, and you have now held for 5 years saying that I've been on the Bayley train and the Sasha train. By the way, Sasha, your hair looks like shit. Just saying.
Oh, my God. We'll get to that in a minute, but...
All right. Then we got the Kevin Owens, Shane McMahon match, which we spoke about. Kevin Owens was made to look like a complete dweeb. Getting this... You're like, seriously, you got that distracted by freaking Elias that you almost got counted out twice? And then... Did you hear the line he said to Elias when Elias pulled the referee out? You're better than this. What is that? You're better than this.
That cracked me up. I don't understand where that came from.
All right. This is arguably might have been one of the best match of the night. It was Charlotte Flair and Trish Stratus. They put on a good match. The way it was booked was good. Obviously, the right person won because Trish is retiring for good now, so you do the honors on your way out. Plus, Charlotte's one of the top women in WWE. To book it to the fact that Trish beats Charlotte would make zero sense.
Yeah, they did that match well, actually. To be honest with you, I was actually very surprised that match came off. Trish hasn't wrestled full-time in, 10 years, if not more?
Yep. Bring your camera down. Can't only see your pillow. There we go. There's the mug.
So Trish hasn't wrestled full-time. Got to be, at least 10 years, right?
13 years she hasn't wrestled full-time. 8 years since she's had a singles match, but I don't count that because that match was against Vicky Guerrero.
Right. So, you got to give her credit where it's due. She looked good for a girl who hasn't put on a pair of tights and done anything significant in going on over a decade. Although I got to give Charlotte most of the credit on that one, probably.
But I like the fact that Trish threw on the figure 8. I don't think anyone's ever done that to Charlotte before.
No, overall it was fun. Like I said, the match itself, I had no issue with the in-ring work, even though it was slow. It wasn't terrible. Like I said, you can't sit here and say it was a bad pay-per-view. I'm not going to sit here and say it was a great pay-per-view, but it wasn't bad. If I got to
fair.
I give it a C+.
Yeah, fair. Then you got Kofi against Randy, ending in the double DQ. Like I said, we talked about that before. I feel also this was another match that they just didn't get into the next gear. Now, the thing I was most looking forward to, I think the thing that everyone was looking forward to, The Fiend makes his debut. And let's get into it. I know you weren't happy with something in the match, so let's talk about it. Finn Balor comes out.
I enjoyed the entrance. I love the entrance. Love what they did. I'm liking the character. He should have came in there and beaten him to a pulp. Not one bit of offense should have been in there. He should have beaten him from pillar to post, put him through a table, mangled him to the point where they called a disqualification, and then disappeared from the ring. Finn Balor should have gotten no offense whatsoever. What are you going to do? You're going to ruin him by squashing him? What's he got going as his points anyway? He is ruined.
It made no sense.
There is nothing you can do with Finn Balor at this point. Finn Balor as a character is finished. Let him go away, come back as the Demon, but you know what? Until then, he should have freaking destroyed him. As a matter of fact, it shouldn't have been a match. He should have came in there as an unstoppable animal, putting him through tables, choking him out, destroying him, getting disqualified, if anything, and then disappearing from the ring. That's how it should have gone down.
To me, I don't think Finn should have gotten that last flurry before he got ended. I didn't mind the match going 3.5 minutes. That was fine for me. But he should not have had that last flurry. And now someone mentioned, I want to get your opinion on this. Someone talked earlier today that The Fiend is a ripoff of Mick Foley, Mankind, if you will, because he's using the mandible claw. He has split personality. And I find that to be a ridiculous comparison. To me, they're nowhere near anything close to one another. And, I mean, let's be real. People have been using other people's finishers for years. Just because he's using the mandible claw doesn't mean he's Mick Foley. Doesn't mean he's Mankind.
Listen, people have been taking pieces of different gimmicks forever. How many guys have copied Superstar Billy Graham? You know,
Hulk Hogan, without Superstar Billy Graham, there's no Hulk Hogan, right?
Right. So, I mean, is he a carbon copy of Mankind? No one's going to say that. Could he have gotten the idea from the old Mankind stuff? I could see that. Is it that far-fetched, maybe, that they're in the same, that he's taking little pieces of Mankind, hearing the voices, hitting himself in the head, stuff like that? There's definitely similarities there.
Do you think Bray Wyatt went to Mick Foley and asked permission? You think he had enough respect to do that?
I'm sure he did. The guy's a third-generation wrestler. I'm sure he did.
Yep.
But you know, it's where has there ever been any originality in wrestling if you think about it? Somebody's always borrowing something from somebody else. So honestly, if he did go to a vault one day and watch old Mick Foley stuff and take some of the ideas from Mick Foley, I'm fine with that.
So, and then we had Brock Lesnar against Seth Rollins, and Brock sold. Brock sold some stuff for Seth. He gave back.
Brock sold well. Like I said, it wasn't a bad match. It was actually probably one of the better matches of the night. You know, the only issue I have is the end result. You know, I don't get why Vince has hitched his wagon to Rollins. You know, I just don't see where he's going to go with Rollins, where he's hoping Rollins takes him. Rollins is a very vanilla worker, very vanilla on the mic. You know, and like we were discussing earlier today, you know, let's say you took Rollins and made him a prototypical heel where he snatched victory out of the jaws of defeat, and you gave him a good manager like a Paul Heyman, for instance. Would that really change anything about him? I don't think so. You know, there's nothing bad about Seth Rollins. He's not a bad worker. He's not horrible on the mic, but there's nothing great about him either. You know, outside of the gauntlet match, has he ever really had a great match?
And I think the way he presents himself outside of, you know, the ring is this is a reason why people are starting to look down on him. You're a douchebag, dude. The things you say, that makes you a douchebag. It's going to have an effect on how you're viewed, especially on this day and age when social media is so important and so many eyes are on what you're saying. There's no going around, well, that was taken out of context in that article, or I was misquoted. It's your own personal freaking blog, your own freaking Twitter. You're saying it yourself. You want to go back and...
almost like the Joe Biden of wrestling at this point.
It's like you want to go back and forth with, you know, someone from New Japan because you think WWE is great. That's great. You're one of the top guys. You're waving the WWE flag. That's fine. Don't say that you make more money. That makes you look like such a douchebag. Obviously, you're going to make more money than a guy in New Japan. You don't need to throw it out there because that's not going to prove that your company is better than New Japan or Impact or AEW or anything. It's almost like Shane McMahon did the same thing. He wrote some sort of snide comment on Twitter on Saturday about how Kevin Owens is going to lose and then he's going to go to Elite if we don't buy that company first. That makes no sense. That's just stupid to say. It's like, come on, there's got to be someone who has to monitor these guys before they post shit.
Well, you're a grown fucking ass man. Stop saying stupid shit on social media.
Exactly.
You know, but that's besides the point. You know, you look at like Seth Rollins. I mean, I've gone off on him before. I'm going to try not to go off on him again. I've never seen the company, with or without the brand split, have such meaningless world champions. Whether it's Kofi or Rollins, like even Jack Swagger had a gimmick. Alberto Del Rio had a gimmick. Those are horrible champions, and neither one of us liked them. But at least they had a gimmick. At least they had something going on. You know, right now this might be, I wouldn't say from in-ring work the worst. I mean, listen, we had Diesel as world champion once, so you know this wasn't Kevin Nash. That was Diesel. That was a pretty bad worker as far as in-ring work goes. But you know, we had the Ultimate Warriors champion once. You know, not much to be said about that. You had Psycho Sid as champion once. So you've had bad in-ring workers as champion. Not often, but it has happened. This is really the first time you've had two champions, personality-wise, gimmick-wise, that were so lame, where at the same time, even though their in-ring work isn't bad, it's just so uninspiring, it's hard to get behind them as champion. We've never really had anything like this before.
Like I said, you know, the shine is off the rose of the Kofi. You know, it's time to take the belt off Kofi. He had his little run. It hasn't done anything. It hasn't moved any needles. You know, it's kind of corny right now. You should have distanced yourself when you became champion from New Day, because now you're just one of the members of New Day holding that belt. You're coming out for a world title match against Randy Orton, the Apex Predator, dangerous competitor. Sorry, Randy's overrated. I'm going to still use air quotes. And you're throwing pancakes at him. That's just stupid.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But at least, you know, Seth is what bothers me more than Kofi. Because my question becomes, what are you going to do with Seth Rollins at this point?
Who's he going to feud with?
Where are you going to go with him at this point? Because you're going to throw him with Braun Strowman? I'm not buying that feud. You're going to throw him with what, Ricochet? I'm not buying it. Him and AJ Styles, I'm not even buying at this point. And I'll be honest, I don't think those two of them are capable of having a good match together. You know, Styles make fights. Styles make matches also.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a guy whose style doesn't, you know, meld with someone else, they're going to look like crap. It doesn't matter how good the person is.
Listen, Brett was a great worker. Great matches. Him and Michaels were together like, you know, peanut butter and jelly, basically. Him and Austin worked fabulously together. Austin and Rock worked well together. Austin and Triple H worked well together. Rock and Triple H worked well together. Jericho and Triple H never worked that well together, if you think about it. You've had guys that could work well, but just not together. Jericho and Rock never worked that well together. You know, Randy Savage, the guy could work with anybody. Him and Flair never had really great matches, whether it was WCW or WWE. They'd have good matches, better than average matches, but those two guys should have been giving us incredible matches. They just didn't mesh well.
Yeah.
Certain guys just don't mesh well. Certain guys do mesh well for whatever reason. For whatever reason, Kane and Undertaker always gave us good matches. Undertaker, Brock Lesnar didn't mesh well. Undertaker, Kurt Angle meshed well. It's just the way it goes sometimes. Whether it's UFC, boxing, wrestling, just certain people work better with others. I don't think AJ Styles and Seth Rollins work well together. They've had now, 4 or 5 matches on TV?
And it hasn't been standout, blow away, oh my God.
And you keep doing the run-ins, you keep doing the DQ finishes, et cetera, and I'm fine with that. But if you gave us a good 15, 20-minute match leading up to it, I'd be even better. Those two they're not meshing well.
Yeah, but it's back to what you said. Where do you go with Rollins? You gave him back the title. Now what? What's your next step? Yeah, you got your story through SummerSlam. Where do we go from here? Where does Clash of Champions lead? Where does Hell in a Cell lead? Where are we going to for Survivor Series? They gotta stop thinking short term, and they need to plan long term.
Well, I'll tell you this. I believe your main event of Hell in a Cell is probably going to be Orton and Kofi. That seems to be where that's going.
Mm-hmm.
It just with Seth Rollins, to me, I don't see him as that next level guy. I just don't see him with a world title. I don't see him taking the company to a next level. I don't see him as a guy you build a company around. I think you have a better shot building the company around Kevin Owens or Samoa Joe or even a Braun Strowman. At this point, honestly, I think your best bet, throw the belt on Braun. Listen, in 95, or end of 94 rather, when Vince really had no clue where things were going, he threw the belt on Diesel. Was it the right decision to make? Yes and no. I think it was the right decision to make where it was able to build up Bret Hart's character to a different level and take him up to that point where he could carry the company. It enabled HBK to go off on his own and become what he became. And maybe that's what you need right now. Throw the belt on Braun, let him run with it, let him crush people, and at the same time, maybe Seth Rollins finds his character.
But
maybe Roman Reigns finds, a way back into the spotlight. Maybe Kevin Owens finds that next level. Maybe Samoa Joe finds that next level. It's something to consider at this point because honestly, Rollins is champion, it ain't working. Rollins is a face, it ain't working. Remember, Bret Hart wins the belt from Ric Flair in October of 92. Okay? He loses it at WrestleMania 9. Doesn't get it back till WrestleMania 10. That's a full year to go and develop himself again. He loses it in November of 94. Doesn't sniff that world title again for an entire calendar year until he beats Diesel at Survivor Series 95. So you had 2 instances in his career where really for a year he was totally out of the title picture. Especially when Diesel was champion. I think at that point he was feuding with, Isaac Yankem and guys like that and Jerry Lawler. Mm-hmm. But that was probably the best thing that could have happened to Bret Hart's career. Because look where his career goes when he wins that belt back from Diesel. Now he's in the stratosphere. And it goes from there to the whole entire Canadian heel here, gimmick. And then Bret Hart is off and running. So sometimes wrestlers need to just step away from that main event spotlight for a little bit. Maybe that's where you go at Rollins.
Well, my question is, you brought up Braun Strowman. Doesn't that fall into that whole big man quandary that we've discussed in the past? Big men can't, who beats him then for the title?
You know what? Figure it out. Give it a year and figure it out. What do you honestly have to lose at this point by putting the belt on Braun for a year and just giving him one challenger after another? Let him win the belt at Survivor Series, let's just say, right? December pay-per-view, he beats AJ Styles. Royal Rumble, he beats Samoa Joe. Then maybe the February pay-per-view, he beats somebody from, wherever. And just go around and around. Let's let him beat a different guy every single pay-per-view. Clean, not clean, doesn't make a difference. And then in a year, figure it out from now. Listen, in a year from now, Drew might be the guy that beats him. In a year from now, Rollins goes and does what Bret Hart did in that year away and is welcome. Remember when Bret Hart beat Diesel, how happy everybody was about that. for two reasons. A, they finally got the belt off of Diesel after a year. But B, that was the Bret Hart everybody kind of wanted to see. You know, he was a face, but he was pulling off some heel tendencies at that point. Maybe that's the route you have to go with at this point. Just throw the belt on Braun and figure it out from there. Maybe Seth comes back in a year and beats him. Maybe Joe comes back in a year and beats him. You know, who knows?
You could always do a multi-man match where he doesn't even have to get pinned for the title.
Yeah, there's a million ways you can go about this. But at the end of the day, it's just, I just do not think. It's not that I don't think. I know Seth Rollins is not the answer to the person who can carry this company. Seth Rollins cannot carry the WWE.
Seth Rollins is not the next John Cena. That's for sure.
Not even close.
Yep.
Could he be another Bret Hart? Could he be another HBK? It's possible. That's possible. But do I see him as the face of this company? No. There's nobody I really see on this roster as the face of the company. I thought Braun Strowman could perhaps possibly be that guy. Maybe. I'd say let's put the belt on him and see where it goes. I'm actually a fan right now of putting the belt on Braun Strowman, to be honest with you.
Well, they got to rebuild him because they totally killed him. So, yeah, I think Survivor Series would be a good trajectory for that. Gives you 3 months to, build Braun's character back up.
And you know what? Let him come out of nowhere and win the belt on a random Monday Night Raw, maybe. Who knows? Just throw it out there, let him win the belt, and go from there like they did with Diesel that time. I see Braun Strowman has a lot of what Kevin Nash had over the years.
How shocked were you back then when he beat Bob Backlund?
Well, he had a freaking
8-second match.
House show, no less.
But it was Madison Square Garden, so,
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't see that ever happening again. You never know. But I think a surprise title change on an episode of Raw can do wonders for that. Seth's got to go. Like I said, I've gone off on it before. I'm not going to go off on it again. To me, Seth Rollins is not a guy that's capable of carrying this company. Now, I don't know if it's forever, but right now, I think Seth Rollins right now is in a very similar place that Bret Hart was in right around 1994 as champion. I think at that point, when he beat Yokozuna, people still weren't sold on Bret Hart. And I think people are not really sold on Seth Rollins as champion.
He gets the little, that's the music gets a pop. He's kind of similar to how Shinsuke and Robert Roode were when they first came in to the main roster. The song got them over, but by the time they started their in-ring work, they just fell on their face.
Yeah, speaking of Shinsuke, where was he last night?
The Intercontinental title, nowhere to be found. The Intercontinental title has been the showcase of SummerSlam. It has had how many great matches at SummerSlam have we had for the Intercontinental title? And you don't even have him on the show at all.
I mean, 88, you have Warrior winning it out of nowhere. 89, Warrior gets it back from Rude. 90, Tex Tornado wins it out of nowhere.
91, that classic with Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect.
92, classic with Bulldog and Hart. Right there alone.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you didn't even see, there was not even a mention of the Intercontinental title.
94, Ramon and Diesel go at it. They have a great match. 95 is your ladder match without you actually using a ladder. It's just, 97, Austin and Owen Hart. 98, the ladder match with Triple H and The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in 02, one of the greatest matches ever. It might have been RVD and Eddie Guerrero maybe in a ladder match. I got to go into my Google machine on this one. I'm pretty sure it was SummerSlam 02, which I'm getting up now.
I'm looking too. See who beats it to first. All right, it was Rob Van Dam against Benoit for the Intercontinental title.
Was that a ladder match?
Just says no singles match.
That's a great match right there. So some of your greatest matches ever are SummerSlam Intercontinental title matches. Just think about that for a second. And last night, it wasn't even on the fucking show.
Yep.
Chat me up on that one. Seriously.
I don't know. Because I guess Shane McMahon was more important than, a title that's been around for 40 years.
Fucking
One in a tournament at Rio de Janeiro. Prestigious tournament.
On a hot, sweaty night.
Yep. Okay. Let's discuss the elephant in the room of, if you watch Monday Night Raw, she's back. The one, the only, the incomparable, the legend, the future Hall of Famer of Botchamania, Sasha Banks with her horrible blue hair is back. Talk to me about this.
She looked absolutely fucking ridiculous. Second of all, does anybody truly give a shit that she's back in any way, shape, or form?
I don't. She could have never came back, and I wouldn't have blinked an eye.
Nah. There's literally nothing about this girl that I want to watch. She has a nice ass. I'll give her that. She has a great body. On that end, she definitely hits the gym hard, and has a great look to her. From the neck down, her face is nothing to look at. But without sounding like a sexist, misogynistic asshole, her work rate's terrible. I'm waiting for the day she finally kills Money in the Ring.
Let's be real. The fact that you had a temper tantrum and had to take 4 months off because you lost the tag titles at WrestleMania in a predetermined sport.
Yeah, I know.
In a predetermined sport, your paycheck didn't change. You were on the WrestleMania card. How many people would have wished they were on a WrestleMania card?
You got the WrestleMania bonus.
And you have a temper tantrum and go home, take your ball and go home for 4 months.
You know what always cracked me up about wrestlers, and I never understood it, is they always flipped out after the match, which they knew they were going to lose. Like, how come they don't flip out when they hear they're going to lose?
I want to bring up the fact that the Iconics are awesome because they are basically, their new gimmick is basically mocking Sasha Banks.
Which I think is very funny.
They lost the tag titles last Monday, and during the commercial, they're on the ground, kicking, screaming. Peyton Royce during the match last night starts pulling that Christian-esque temper tantrum during the match. So I think that's great. And Sasha Banks needs to be humbled, and she needs to know her place, and they should not have brought her back.
If I was Vince, I would have fired her ass in the spot. Oh, it's okay. Goodbye. Go get a job at the AEW.
Yeah.
Well, they think have hired her.
Impact. She'd be an Impact.
Maybe. If she has friends there to put in a good word for her.
Her and Kiera Hogan can play with their hair colors.
I mean, if I was a promoter, I wouldn't hire her. What are you getting out of her? How much money could she possibly make for me?
There's no point to her. Like, okay, here. Who would you rather have, Bayley or Sasha? Gotta pick one.
Bayley, I can do more with her. I can turn Bayley heel. Have her do a Bob Backlund-esque snapping. And probably get a good 2-3 year run out of that with her just being a complete psychopath.
Which they should have done months ago.
Right. Years ago. What could you possibly do with Sasha? On the mic, she's garbage. In the ring, she's okay at best. She botches or tries to kill somebody. What is her character exactly? An egotistical female? Great. I think Bayley, you could throw her in a heel persona, and you could run with it. Botcha, there's nothing you can really do with her. Literally, you could do with her. I can't think of one redeeming quality she has as a talent.
And whoever gave her that idea for blue hair should be shot.
Oh my God, what the hell was that all about? She looks terrible.
Horrible.
Now that she really looks good, I mean, that's a face only a mother could love. But I mean, even her in-ring work is just so slow sometimes. Oh my Lord.
And I think that's why she botches so much. I think because she's moving so slow, she can't keep speed up that needs to be to execute some of these moves she's trying to do whenever she botches them.
There's no rhythm to her. There's no rhythm to her matches. That's the problem.
She had one good match in her career, and that was that one against Bayley at Takeover 1 in Brooklyn. And ever since then, it's just been horrible. But
you know what it is for her? It's just, I think she's a very, in a lot of ways, you look at people like Basha, and you look at Rollins, for instance, and a lot of people coming up, and I think that's where the mistake of NXT comes down. They don't have any respect for the business to a degree. They were kind of spoon-fed everything. They were given their personas. They were given the production. They didn't have to come up the hard way or anything like that. And it's showing. Like, they say you were never spanked by your parent and it shows. They were never spanked by the business and it shows. And Rollins isn't as bad as Botcha. Botcha, I think, is on a different level. But the temper tantrums, the way she conducts herself in and out of the ring, the botches, everything else, it all comes from the way she was raised in the business.
I could understand that being, one of the downfalls of NXT, but then you know what? It's up to NXT to teach these kids the right way to do things then, and the right way to respect the business. I mean, you don't have the people going up and down the roads anymore. You don't have them, making $25 a night, sleeping in their car, eating ramen noodles type stuff. The business has just changed to that point, and it's up to wherever these people land, whether it be NXT, even some of these indie guys that are going with AEW. It's going to end up being the same thing if they're not taught the right way. And it's going to be up to a guy like Cody Rhodes to teach these guys the right way. It's going to be up to Triple H and his crew to teach them the right way. Because otherwise, no matter where they land, they're going to have the same disrespect for the business, whether it's WWE, AEW, Impact, or whatever.
Yes, I agree, but I think Botcha, to me, is a shining example of the influence of NXT on the roster. And my thing is, what I think is astounding is that Vince kept her.
I think with Sasha Banks, it's more about she let her ego get too big. She got cocky. She thought she was better and bigger than she actually was.
Right, but here's the thing. What are they keeping her for? What does she bring to the product?
I'm going to tell you right now, the only reason they're keeping them then and why they're not releasing anyone is because of AEW. I bet if there was no AEW, she would have been released after WrestleMania.
Yeah, at the very least.
I mean, it's the same reason why we have Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff in WWE now.
It's amazing. Amazing. It really is, with this girl who's an absolute spoiled brat, who's not a great worker, not great on the mic, brings nothing to the company, brings nothing to the product itself, is actually controlling what Vince McMahon does.
Avi, AEW had a huge signing today. I don't know if you heard. They signed Orange Cassidy.
Interesting.
I know he was your favorite guy. His hands in his pockets. With those devastating kicks to Tommy Dreamer in the buy-in battle royal at Double or Nothing.
Why does this guy have a job?
Let's be real. AEW's got to sign these lower guys. You can't just have three 30-minute matches with the Bucks.
I agree. So I get it. Yeah, get the talent over there. I'm looking so forward to seeing Maxwell Friedman week in and week out starting in October. That guy right there has got superstar, megastar written all over him. He's like, we've never seen anything like him, really. He's almost like a modern-day Roddy Piper in a lot of ways.
And Piper, he said in an interview, Piper was like one of the guys he looked up to, so it would make a lot of sense. He's a mix.
On Twitter, he's relentless.
He's a mix of Piper, Jericho, and Miz, I feel. Like those three wrapped all together. I mean, back when Miz was a heel.
If The Miz left WWE, he would be so much better off.
A lot of
I'm
guys would
telling
be better
you now,
off.
if Miz left WWE, went to AEW, and got into a feud with MJF, that'd be the feud of the decade. Those two on Twitter alone going off on each other. The shit that would come out of those guys' mouths on a regular basis. I mean, that's the one thing I'm looking forward to the most, this guy MJF. Granted, I'm biased, he's a Long Island guy, but this guy has got serious, serious talent.
He needs a breakout match. He hasn't had a singles match yet.
You know what's funny about him is that he's a small guy, and he realized for a small guy to make it in this business, you got to have a big personality. And I think, you look at guys like Piper, you look at guys like Jericho. These were not big guys, but they made it because of that ridiculous personality. And I think that honestly, he's going to fit into that Jericho Piper mold. I don't mean Jericho now. I see him as a Jericho from like 97, 98, going through the 1,007 moves of Chris Jericho, stuff like that. I can see him pulling stuff like that. I'm looking so forward to seeing that guy on a weekly basis. I cannot wait. That is the one guy that I honestly think could take AEW to that next level. If he opens up that first show and they just let him run wild with a 20-minute shoot and just rip apart WWE, we're off and running.
Yeah, that definitely is going to be that first shots fired, even more than the Cody with the sledgehammer to the chair. But I'm gonna hopefully things are gonna be working out. That I'm gonna be at episode 3 in Philly. Episode
Nice.
episode 2 is gonna be in Boston. Episode 1, as we know, is gonna be in DC. So interesting. You think they're gonna hit Nassau Coliseum, or is Nassau exclusive to WWE?
Nah, seems like nothing's exclusive these days.
So
I would not be sure. Well, it's going to depend on marketing where they're big, obviously. Tony Khan is not a stupid guy. He's obviously got a lot of marketing people at work. I'd be curious to see when they come to New York and where they go. I think there's going to be a lot of marketing research before they come into a place like that. The first show's in D.C., second one's in Boston, third one's in Philly. So obviously they're going after the East Coast, it seems like. I'd be very curious to see where they go from there. They had shows in Vegas already. They've had shows in Florida. They haven't hit L.A. yet. So I'm kind of curious when they go to L.A. and New York, what they're going to hit.
Well, they're going to be in Chicago at the end of the month. And I'm question of the week for you, Av. Is CM Punk going to return to wrestling with AEW? Yes or no?
I believe he will.
Don't you think that there would be more of a buzz?
I believe there's too much money to turn down for him. I believe it's too much money for them. I think it'll be one of those things that if it does happen, it'll be one of those things that comes out of nowhere.
Well, there we go. So we're going to see what happens. You know what? You guys got questions for him? You got questions for me? You got questions in general? WillYouStopPodcast.com. That's where it is. That's where it's at.
If CM Punk shows up, I'd like it to be like a Brian Pillman ECW type deal. Lights go out and he's just standing in the ring, looking disheveled and out of whack, and just lays into WWE.
Don't you think doing that now is 5 years later, though, is kind of like, old news?
The WWE has given guys like him and MJF and other guys so much material to go off on. You can have an entire 2-hour episode just going off on WWE.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying if he starts bringing up the doctor stuff and all the stuff he did on the Colt Cabana podcast, isn't that kind of like it's old already? It's old news. Bringing it up is like
he can just talk about the shit that we're seeing now on a weekend basis.
Yeah, that I agree with. But I'm just saying, I wouldn't bring up all that stuff from 5 years ago, the whole reason you left the company. It's just like it's old already.
Well, he doesn't have to. He's just going with the hell we're seeing every Monday and soon to be Friday night.
Him and Moxley can go back and forth with the horrible creative.
Did you see that god-awful, cheesy commercial they have now on Fox?
No, I didn't.
That I sent to you today?
Oh, yes, I saw that one.
That was just awful. Like, that was so cheesy and childlike.
I read that they're going to be starting to shoot this week commercials for Fox, like official commercials that all the stars are going to be heading into to the studios to shoot stuff. So we're going to see. That's going to be interesting where they go with on October. Your brother made a good point. What are they going to do in 2 months to turn the ship around before Fox?
I don't even... Well, I mean, if you're just talking about it from a SmackDown perspective, A, get Shane off TV, period. B, figure out what you're going to do with Roman. C, figure out what you're going to do with Daniel Bryan. Those are your most important things, I would say, right about now. You know, what are you doing with Daniel Bryan? What are you doing with Roman Reigns? Like those are like your two biggest stars on SmackDown that are literally sitting there with the thumb up their ass. What are you doing with the Intercontinental title? How does that sound?
Yep.
You know, you got a bunch of guys on a roster sitting there literally with the thumb up their ass. And here's my question. What are you going to do with Drew McIntyre? You're going to put him on Raw SmackDown. It seems like he's more of a free agent these days than anything else.
Well, there's no real brand extension anymore, and they don't even mention the wild card anymore. It's just, they're here from SmackDown.
Right. So, I mean, you're obviously going to have a hard draft, quote unquote. You know, who are you going to put on what show is also a big thing they got to really figure out in the next 2 months. You know, 2 months going to fly by real quick. When's the premiere of SmackDown on Fox? Was it October 5th or 4th?
Yeah, 4th, 2 days after AEW debuts.
You know, I think the only thing they can do that would honestly make sense is Wednesday night when you're doing the live NXT show, whatever show you do live, I would just have the draft Wednesday night against AEW.
That's an interesting thing to do against their thing.
You know, go with the draft, see what happens, but make it a good draft. Don't just make it this bullshit they do all the time. You know, have a full draft like they do in the NFL.
FS1.
You know, but my question is, you know, who do you put on what show? What do you do with what? But I'll tell you what would be a good idea, to be quite honest with you, is not to have two separate world champions, but to have one world champion on both shows.
Mm-hmm. That travels.
I think your U.S. title should be your number one title on SmackDown. Your Intercontinental title should be your number one SmackDown on Raw. Both shows should have tag team titles. Both shows should have women's championships. I agree with that. I think both shows should have women's tag team championships. Might as well. But I think the world title should be one champion, defends it on both shows. That's the deal. And that's going to show who your biggest person is. When you have two world champions, one of them is going to get watered down. And for years, your SmackDown champion always got watered down.
And that's been the WWE title on top of it.
It didn't matter if it was Edge. It didn't matter if it was Batista, Undertaker even, or Lesnar. It didn't make a difference. That was always looked at as a secondary title. And guess what? It still is.
That's right.
When was the last time the SmackDown Championship main evented a WrestleMania or any major pay-per-view?
It hasn't. I can't think of it.
So no matter what, SmackDown's always going to be your secondary show, no matter how good it is. Why is it always going to be your secondary show? For the simple fact that first in wins. We all know this. Raw was always your major show. That was always your show that was going one-on-one with, you know, against Nitro in the war and this and that. SmackDown's never going to be on the same level as a Raw. I don't care if you put it on Fox. I don't care if you put it on NBC and CBS at the same time as Fox. It's never going to happen. So, like I said, I think you have one world champion for both shows, U.S. title on SmackDown, or even Intercontinental. It doesn't make a difference. But I think if you put that one world champion, you're making him that much bigger.
And the title much bigger.
Absolutely. And if you put it on Braun and let him go be on both shows, I'm fine with that right now, to be quite honest with you.
And it gives you more options instead of the same guy month in and month out.
You know, it's at a point now where, you know, your SmackDown champion was always your secondary champion. And I think if you just have one world champion, it takes away the stigma, so to speak, of SmackDown. Mm-hmm. You know, and my question now becomes, you know, now that SmackDown is on Fox, which is national TV, are they going to put more of an emphasis on SmackDown and Raw now?
I think SmackDown is going to become the number one show, to be honest.
And that's happened before. Listen, from 2002 to 2005, when Paul Heyman ran the ship on SmackDown, SmackDown was by far and away the bigger show. Even Vince McMahon was showing up on SmackDown more than Raw for a while, if you remember.
Yep. That's right.
You know, when he had Sable with him and he ran that whole entire feud. So, you know what? We've seen SmackDown as your number one show before. You know, we've seen Raw as your stepchild, so to speak.
It's going to be very interesting. October, that first week of October is going to be a very interesting time in wrestling.
Wrestling history. Listen,
Yeah,
wrestling will never be the same after October.
that's right.
You know, and it's funny because I was actually watching the last WWE pay-per-view, Greed, which was on, I'm trying to think what date that was. What was it, March 18th? Yeah, March 18th, 2001, a week before Vince buys WCW. And I'm watching the first couple of matches, and it's amazing because WCW at that point, had they survived, would have had a nice niche for themselves in the North American market. They were still pulling decent crowds of 5 to 8,000, somewhere in there. Their ratings were still pulling, you know, anywhere from a 2.8 to a 3.0, which is basically what Raw does now. So it wasn't like the ratings were getting killed. But what was amazing was that the in-ring work was so much better than what WWE was even doing back then at that point. You know, so looking back at it, you know, there's something to be learned from there. Where if you put something different than WWE and it's good, you'll find that niche. You know, if Impact would have had a live show every Wednesday night on a good channel, would they have done better? Who knows? It's something to consider. You know, it's all about booking and creative. We both know that. But like I said, if you watch that last WWE pay-per-view, the in-ring work by far and away was better than what anything WWE was doing. The problem was at that point, Russo put him in such a booking hell that there was just, you know, it was going to take a month to dig their way out. They probably would have dug their way out had Bischoff taken over and gotten what he needed. But that being said, AEW just, you know, they have it all sitting right in the palm of the lap right now.
Yep.
Right on the lap. They have it sitting there. All they got to do is make sure the creative goes with it.
And we're going to find out very, very soon. And I think that's going to wrap it up for us today. WillYouStopPodcast.com is going to be the place, the one-stop place that you can hit us up. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to know, what you want us to talk about. And, yeah, the countdown to October is on.
Next time we talk, we're probably going to be taking this show on the road.
Yep, we're going to do our first road show, our first live road show, the weekend of the 23rd. We're going to be celebrating someone's end of bachelorhood. And we're going to be in Ocean City, Maryland.
And we're going to take this show on the road. So, guys, if you have any questions or concerns or comments, come and bring it.
Yeah, well, we're going to be record from the beach, probably.
Romantic.
All right. I'm Brandon.
I'm Avi.
We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.